And we've got another weekend of violence in Paris, and it's more quieter where I live. There's people that come out, and it's more like a celebration than a riot like France, like Paris. But even so, it's everybody around knows. I mean, there's the only people who don't seem to understand how serious things are and how people feel are the media. The media never mention these things. They're picking on Russia Today because this little film is from Russia Today. It's a Russia Today streaming of what's going on in Paris, and they're opposed to that, and they're already opposed to Russia Today in French. It's only been going a few months, and they already want to cut it out. I mean, this is the free West. You know, this is the Europe that we should all be so happy to be a member of. Nobody wants to be in Europe. Nobody. You don't even need a brain to realise that the job of the European Union was perfectly clear: to strip Europe of all of its industry, to bring in as many immigrants as possible, print money to pay all the welfare, and turn her into the biggest welfare state on the planet. And that's all it's ever going to be. And the French people are being destroyed. They're being absolutely destroyed by their own government. I mean, these demonstrations here, they're not just out complaining about being unable to feed their families. These people are out because they're sick and tired of immigrants. I mean, they're absolutely sick and tired of them. And so am I. I mean, I'm genuinely sick and tired of them. Everywhere you look, you see these well-dressed immigrants that haven't got a job, especially around where I live, in the south of France. There's absolutely no work down here. There's no industry. There never has been. So when the rest of France was stripped of its industry, around where I live, we didn't even notice. What you do notice is we used to have crowds and crowds of people coming in summer for the vendange in September. Now that's finished. The vendange is over and done with before daylight these days. They've got huge machines out there with headlights on, and they're picking the grapes when it's still dark. I mean, there's nothing left anymore. I mean, I genuinely believe that the immigrants that are here now, they should be sent back to wherever they came from. They're not far away, are they? They're in the Maghreb. It's not very far. I just cannot understand the point of hundreds of thousands of Arabs sitting in tower blocks in France with no work, nothing to do, not amongst their own people apart from the crowd around them. I can't understand what they're doing here. It is quite obviously it's for another reason. I was putting it to somebody, they were having a go at me the other day, and I was having an argument with them. Well, if you can point me out to some place where you come from, where there's a few high-rise blocks full of French people claiming Soch, I'd be very happy to hear where it is. Oh, whoa, you know, there's no response to that, because there's nobody else on earth that does that sort of thing apart from white Christian people. And you can't even make a comment anymore as a white person about being called a supremacist. I mean, it's enough to make you want to gag. I mean, these people are absolutely disgusting. They're hanging around. I'm still paying for them. I still have to pay all my bloody charges. And they do nothing, and they're living better than I am. They're living better than most of my friends. And that is not an exaggeration. And I was listening to something about the United States. With this, the Democrats are talking about in certain places like in New York and California, they're talking about giving health care for everybody. Now I just think people are lunatics, because by everybody they mean anybody who walks into a hospital in New York or California will get free health care. When at the moment a third of all money earned by working people in America goes on health care. So that's $30 out of every 100 you earn goes on healthcare, and yet all these immigrants that never work, they just come in with their hands held out, they're getting it all for free. I mean, there's another business going on at the moment. Somebody turned around and said that a woman should be able to have an abortion, even as the baby's being born. She could probably tell, oh, look, it's got black hair, I don't want a black-haired baby, and tell the doctor to kill it. I mean, that seems to be I mean, I don't know if it's actually as bad as that, but they described it pretty much like that. As the baby's being born, they'll either let the baby be born and put it to one side, and then the doctor and the mother will have a chat about it and see whether they want to allow it to live. Well, just everybody's shocked about this, but I can remember 25 years ago hearing tales of babies that were born aborted and left on a draining board to die. I mean, I don't know why suddenly everybody's surprised about it. I mean, this has been happening for years. I mean, in all schools, they should be showing you films of what it's like to carry out an abortion. I mean, people have got absolutely no idea how horrific it is. And when you're talking about in America alone, it's something like 75 million babies have been aborted since the 70s. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, we don't deserve to exist as a people. I mean, I don't know what have women become? I mean, this nonsense. Everything that women are demanding is based on this notion that everything was always so good for men, and now they want it that good for them. Well, it never was that good for men. I mean, they always want to look at these guys that have got his Ferrari and the private jet, and they're flitting around doing nothing much because it's all, you know, inherited wealth or something that is working government funded or whatever. And they think that it's like that for all men when it's not. And I'll tell you, women are just beginning to get a dose of it now, because there's a lot of these transgenres who are taking part in women's sport. Men with a dick in, got a dick in their knickers, competing against women, and suddenly women don't like it. So there's suddenly a backlash from the very people who've been pushing this nonsense, the very people who are encouraging their kids to take hormones that'll stop adolescence, and there's black women ironing their kids' tits flat. I mean, you know, women are something else. I mean, same as this female genital mutilation. I mean, I can remember when I was at school, a kid came along, he had a book, and it was about black people in Sierra Leone. And they were doing it then to the young girls. I don't know whether that meant they were Muslims or what. I don't know if it's... I mean, apparently Muslims do actually... A friend of mine was saying that Muslims do actually circumcise boys. I didn't know that before, but he's sure, oh yeah. He told me he'd been circumcised. I mean, I see all this rioting. They're talking now. America has said that if the Maduro government takes any action against the people out in the streets, the Americans will be in to put them in their place. Now look at this. I mean, look at this. These cops. I mean, look at the way they're dressed. I mean, not that long ago, like these people were just out with their ordinary uniforms on. They weren't dressed like this. I mean, they've killed 22 people during these riots. There's dozens who've lost eyes and all sorts of things. I mean, it's been absolute carnage on the streets, and the people are still coming back for more. The people are serious. I mean, people are waking up to the fact that the bankers have got us by the balls, and it's as simple as that. And there's no way any of this nonsense will be fixed unless the banks are taken out. It's that simple. They will have to go. I mean, I keep trying to, figure out how you could possibly... They're talking now about America has got a $220 trillion debt. Now, it's obvious that that can never be paid. That's perfectly obvious. You just couldn't do it. I mean, just the national debt. I mean, people don't even understand what the national debt is. You try to explain to people what the national debt is, they just can't grasp it. When you try to say, you ask people, if I say to people, what is the deficit? They haven't got a clue. They just know it's a shortage of money for something. And when you say, yes, but what is it? What is it short of? And they haven't got a clue. And when you try to pull a couple of notes out of your pocket and hold them up, 20 euros, look, you see that? That's the debt. All right? And what do you mean that's the debt? We said that is the debt. The money that you use to spend, the money in all the ATM machines and everything else, even the virtual money online, all of it, that is the debt. And they can't understand. And we say, yes, but if you've got to hold of all of that money, all of it, right, and paid it all into the banks, you'd still have a debt with them because you've got to pay the interest on that. And France is paying 85 million a year, 85 billion a year, euros, in payment in interest to the banks. And every country in Europe is doing virtually the same. And you cannot make people understand that is money going into private pockets, and it's our money. And when you say it could all be done without any interest at all, so that 85 billion would be available to spend on schools and hospitals and everything else. And our government know that. Like our governments know everything. Like for example, they know exactly who owns the Bank of England, but they won't tell you. They know exactly who owns the Bank of France, but nobody will tell you. Right? Governments know, they know everything. And they could stop this racket at a stroke if they wanted to, but they choose not to. Because there's only a certain number of politicians that go, well, they haven't really got any power of their own, but they're in contact with the people who have got power. Like Theresa May, look, she's made an absolute bloody idiot of herself, all this going backwards and forwards. She was an absolute idiot, losing all these big votes because she's got no choice, because her boss, Rothschild, is telling her exactly what she has to do. And that's what's going on. I mean, when you talk about changing the system, you've got to change an awful lot of things at the same time. Like for example, this business about Maduro and Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein and Assad in Syria, all these people, they're all being treated in exactly the same way as Hitler was. But you cannot. There's been so much bad mouthing of Hitler and the Germans. You just cannot get it across to people that what was Hitler? Hitler wasn't doing anything in particular. He was just getting on with life. And you can't make people understand that. What he did was kick the Jews out of Germany. And he didn't actually kick them all out of Germany. He took a lot of people who had power of certain kinds out of the positions that they held because they were controlling Germany in exactly the same way as the Jews are controlling us all now. I mean, we're going into a steep decline right now. We're on our way heading down to somewhere, and it's a tiny group of people who control us. I mean, they've already taken control of Russia, and we cross our fingers and pray that it's now a Christian country and Putin might be able to do something. They've got control of China. They took control of China in 1949 or sometime. They've already got the Chinese building roads in Africa and all the rest of it. They're intent on taking hundreds of millions of people out of Africa. Then that's all for them. And then we're going out. I mean, you look at people in the street, you can see we're sick and sorry people. People are so fat that they're not even fit for the army. They're not even fit to be shot anymore. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. And the government knows all this. Like the government knew what the last war was about. Everybody knows that it was a war that was forced onto Germany. Everybody knows that there was collusion with Stalin behind the scenes. Everybody knows it. They were arming Stalin. Stalin was already stealing the wheat from the Ukraine in 1933 and storing it in preparation for a war that wasn't going to start until 6 years later. He knew what was coming. And then they calmly gave all of Eastern Europe to the communists. And then they say, oh, the communists are the enemies. Yeah, you're right. Of course they are. I mean, I just keeping my fingers crossed that Trump will come up with something.